And we are back with Wrestling Lesson with Tiger Height. So, what I decided to do, I want to talk about two big things because I've gotten requests for it. I wanted to talk about the old screw jobs of the day, especially with this circumstance, because this thing really impacted the industry. But also, a fan sent me some footage of a match, because so this match was Gustav, I'm gonna butcher these, so just bear with me. Gustav fristensky versus Josef Smejkal. I think I did that right. Smejkal. This match, to what people know, this happened in Czechoslovakia in 1913. So right now, still to this day, this is the oldest professional wrestling match on film. The match itself was very much a Greco-Roman style match, but it happened on an elevated square platform. There were no ropes or anything to this point, because number one, the people in the audience actually built the stage.
Cool.
This match was outside because it was a unsanctioned fight. So, also, around 1913, this is kind of around the war. So really,
the First World War.
The First World War.
Right.
We will actually talk about World War II during this because I found a lot of great information about Gustav that pertains to that. But this was an unsanctioned thing. But to what I have found about the origins of this particular match, that this was a rematch between Gustav, who was actually one of the more popular guys in Czechoslovakia. And then Josef won the first match, but we never got a decision of this one. That's the problem, because the footage kept breaking off because it was damaged. So there was not a lot of information about Josef at all. I looked and prodded and really dug deep, but I could not find any information about this guy. Not even where he was from, to what I'm going to assume is going to be somewhere in Europe because of the last name. But Gustav was the main focal point of this. He was a strongman, with a lot of wrestling at this point, strongman, and also a Greco-Roman wrestler. So he got into professional wrestling because he lost his job as a butcher's apprentice. Before that, his parents sent him off when he was 14 years old to learn how to be a blacksmith, because at this time blacksmiths that was like your secure job. There was always going to be a time when you needed the blacksmith skills, but this is kind of where he trained to become that, because he was lifting very heavy things and he had to use a lot of his muscle to do that. So he got into wrestling, to what I am understanding, because his friend was one of the main promoters in Czechoslovakia at the time. There was no audio to this match whatsoever. And it was just kind of but it's really cool to see, because this is like 1913.
Wasn't this the first? This was the first match where the winner was predetermined.
Yes. Well, this is that era, so this is why most people credit this as a professional wrestling match, because there was a predetermined winner.
And that's what the difference was.
Yep. It was very Greco-Roman, though, most certainly. And also, they did like entrances, and they had like, right before they got into the ring, they did like a picture of them, and they shook the hands with the commission at the time. The commission with gigantic air quotes.
Right.
So, going back to Gustav, he's incredibly important because he was actually imprisoned in 1943 by the Nazis because he joined the resistance, the resistance movement in Czechoslovakia. So his wife had to marry a Nazi prison commander to get him to be free, which kind of is interesting. And really, that was about it, because he died not too soon after in 1953. So I thought it was kind of cool to find this. I will put down where you can find this in the description, so if you want to watch it, you most certainly can. But I want to talk about screw jobs. Now, Montreal's, overblown. The original screw job, we kind of know most of it, but I want to talk about OG screw job.
Okay.
So, in the 1920s, wrestling promoters like Billy Sandow, who was part of the Goldust Trio, and Paul Bowser had already made their names for themselves as ruthless and capable businessmen because they were also wrestlers.
Right.
And the screw job was one of the tools in their arsenal. Because the world champion would go back and forth between different promotions, and it wasn't organized like the NWA at this point. So Ed Strangler Lewis was the Billy Sandow choice of world champion across the United States and Europe. There were 3 different screw jobs that really made this up because this really fractured wrestling, Canadian, and even Mexican wrestling. So that's why we had separate champions in promotions until the NWA came around. So, in 1925, Ed Strangler Lewis lost the title to former college football player Wayne Munn as a part of an angle to draw football fans to wrestling, which worked to some capacity, actually, especially in Philadelphia. It's important later. But Lewis and Sandow were betrayed by former trustworthy friend Stanislaus
Zbyszko.
Zbyszko.
Yes.
So this is OG Zbyszko, a very, very gigantic, powerful guy at the time. He went rogue and basically beat the shit out of Munn, where the referee had to call the match in Zbyszko's favor, because Zbyszko thought that there was going to be a riot in Philadelphia for some reason. So he is champion. He is the world champion according to the rules of wrestling at the time. Sandow got the match erased from the books in Michigan and Illinois, but not everywhere else, which I think is kind of cool. And had the titleist champion Munn drop the belt back to Lewis, despite Zbyszko holding on to the actual championship, which he'd later drop to another competitor. So at this point, we have 2 separate champions. We have Lewis, and then we have Zbyszko, who beat the former champion.
Right.
In 1931, Strangler was set to lose the champion to Ed Don George, a champion chosen by Paul Bowser without Sandow or Lewis's knowledge, but threatened to turn the match into a shoot. George, knowing he couldn't win a shoot fight against Lewis, did the job, and the Strangler became champion again.
Okay.
So at this point, that's what's going on here. It is important. But Strangler got his desserts later the same year when he defended against Henry DeGlane. So this one is kind of weird because people think that this is the big screw job. Lewis was scheduled to win this match in 3 falls because they did best 2 out of 3 falls for most title matches at the time. So that's why a lot of Lucha Libre wrestling is 2 out of 3 falls for title matches because of this tradition. But during the second fall, DeGlane retreated to the back, bit himself in the arm near the armpit right here until he drew blood. He returned to the ring and revealed the wound to the referee. And the ref disqualified Lewis for biting DeGlane. This was holy shot. So now DeGlane has beaten Lewis for the championship. A furious Lewis went backstage and took out his anger on Bowser, only to be turned away by a baseball bat wielding bodyguard. He had been out screw jobbed by a master screw jobber. So we basically have like 3 different champions at this point. And like I said, DeGlane was like the big screw job because the issue was, and why this is important, because the Strangler thing came from his finishing move, which was the side headlock. And DeGlane got Lewis into his own move.
Huh.
So that's why after the fall, he ran to the back and did that because guess where your head is? In a side headlock, right there. So coming out doing that. This stuff is important because this is kind of where wrestling was back then. People were like, oh, the Carney days were so unknown and rare. It's like, I mean, there's so much backstabbing, so much hitting. Really, this is why the NWA was formed, because there was an over-governing body that made these decisions that had all the control of main champions, so world champion, tag team champions, but then you had individual champions that
in the territories,
in each territory that were interim. So really, this is kind of where it was, and I'm glad that we don't have this kind of backstabbing and all of this tumultuous shit. Well, not to this point though. This is really, really bad. But I thought it was kind of interesting. Somebody wanted me to cover the original Screwjob, so I thought it was kind of interesting to do a fun little wrestling lesson about that kind of stuff. So let me know what you think. If you want to put in any suggestions for either segment, Bible study, or wrestling lesson, tweet it at us. There will be a link. Go ahead and do so. So when we come back, we're going to get to our big topic, which is blunders and not wrestling.
The biggest booking blunders. Say that 5 times fast.
Right, and Peanut Gallery is going to start out with the choices that I gave him.
Yes.
Yeah.